Paul Alankara Prabhu, thank you very much for holding this Sravanam Saturday classes very religiously, sincerely. It's a great inspiration for all of us, and I'm sure you know this. No secret for you that I follow very closely on the YouTube, even if I'm not able to make it here. So I listen to classes, not every single class, but most of the time I try to catch up, and it has been very inspiring for me. So I appreciate your service and what you're doing for the community as a whole. I think it's a great. This is what Prabhupada wanted. He wanted everybody Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, but it is Nityam Bhagavata because if you can connect to YouTube and you can listen anytime. So thank you very much for that. And also thank you, Anantashesh Prabhu, for encouraging us and giving your association. With that said, let me start off with the prayers. Which one? Okay. So let me start off with the Guru Charana prayers. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jananana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Dhamma Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajata Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaikam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpataru Vishcha Kripa Sindhu Eva Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. Once again, thank you everyone for this opportunity to speak something about Srimad Bhagavatam on this auspicious day after Ekadasi, on the auspicious day of appearance day of Sri Ramanuja Acharya. So, to begin with, I'm not trying to be humble, but it's a true statement. I'm not qualified to speak any of this, but by the grace of Srila Prabhupada and my grace of my Guru, Maharaj, His Holiness Sri Radhanath Swami Maharaj, I hope to speak something Maharaj always says, speak in a way that is pleasing to others, not agitate people. So I hope I can live up to that expectation today. And in the process, we can all have an interactive discussion. I know you all attend these classes regularly. So at the end, I hope at least we can have some 3 to 5 minutes of interactive discussion where I can also learn from all of you. So with that in mind, I will stick to the agenda or the format that Alankara Prabhu has laid out. I believe we have to speak all the verses together and we discuss at the end, or is it like one after the other? Either way. Okay. So today we are discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, Text 21. And the name of the chapter is the 17th chapter. King Pariksit punishes coming. Thank you. So it seems like I'm following up this session, on the footsteps of a great speaker, Jainatai Prabhu, who spoke last week, right?
Yeah. Punishment and reward of sin.
Punishment and reward of sin. Thank you. I should know better than you. Sorry about that. So Jainatai Prabhu spoke very eloquently on how Kali Purusha appeared and some of the struggle that goes on immediately. He punishing the bull and the cow. So let's give some context, if you don't mind, so we can get into this. So this chapter starts off with the appearance of Kali Purusha, and it also signifies the beginning of Kali Yuga. This is right after Lord Krishna leaves this earth, along with his associates. And Pariksit Maharaj, or King Pariksit, was the leader of this universe pretty much at that time. And one day this is there even in the days of Lord Ramachandra, where he does a tour of the city and the villages where people live in his neighborhood, and sometimes in disguise, mostly in disguise, I should say, so that he understands what is in people's mind and what is bothering them, what are the issues, so that he can solve. So this is there even from the days of Lord Ramachandra. And King Pariksit, being a descendant of Arjuna, one of the Pandavas, and great devotees of the Lord, he also pretty much followed the same principle. And during one of his tour, he sees this very disturbing, horrendous activity where Kali Purusha, a very strong man, apparently from the description, he is beating the cow on the legs, and he also sees the bull, which is typically, as you all know, has 4 legs, but now standing on 1 leg, trembling with fear and urinating. So the 3 legs are destroyed. So the bull represents the religiosity and principles of religion, and the cow represents Mother Earth. Now, let's understand what the 4 legs are. According to the religious principles, the 4 legs are austerity, cleanliness, truthfulness, and mercy, of which the 3 legs represent, which are lost: austerity, mercy, cleanliness, gone. Prabhupada explains in the later purport that why is this the case in Kali Yuga, that these 3 are lost? It is lost due to pride and over attraction to the opposite sex. In the purports, he generally talks about attraction to women, but it's safe to say in Kali Yuga it works both ways. So attraction to the opposite sex, and the last one is intoxication. So in Kali Yuga, this is a big problem. So pride generates what? Pride generates many things, but immediately what I can think of is, from my own experience, is false ego. Recently in the Vyasa Puja, I think you were there in Michigan, of His Holiness Sravanam Maharaj, he talked about this false ego, particularly from the point of view of how it can destroy a community. So our intent as devotees is to serve the Lord and to serve other Vaishnavas. We are always in the mood of, as Lord Chaitanya taught us, Jivera Swarupam, Krishnera Nityadas. We are always in the mood of servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. We have to remember that. And I try hard sometimes, I should say, not always, try to remember that. Because we can easily lose focus and perspective when we start getting into an initiative within a community, whatever that initiative could be. That pride and false ego can immediately seep into our mindset. Very dangerous. So the devotees are always, and Maharaj spent a lot of time in that lecture, as you know, speaking about that. How false ego prevents us from cooperating with each other. Within the temple, within community, it could be any service. I have a better idea than you. Why is he saying this to me? All that. So one has to guard himself. And I'm unlike so many other senior devotees in our community. I'm not personally associated with Maharaj, always at a distance. But when you read his books, when you hear his lectures, that's good enough. You don't have to. Maharaj always says, Vani is much more. He wants people not to have that longing for personal, hey, Maharaj is coming, when is he coming? When Maharaj always says, everything I need to say is in my lectures. You don't need to hear from me, right? Personally. Of course, personal instructions are great. But the mood of separation and being able to follow the instructions, just listening to his lectures is what Maharaj wants, from what I know. So if you, back to what I was saying, he said in so many ways in that lecture how false ego plays a prominent role. And here we see that at the beginning of Kali, it's already set the stage for all this to happen in days to come. So beyond that, having discussed the state of the cow and the bull, the purport goes on to explain in the previous verses what kind of a king Pariksit was. He was an ideal, exemplary king for any leader in this day and age to follow. Kali, by definition, means quarrel, confusion, hypocrisy. So, with that being said, one has to have solid clarity. And Prabhupada explains in so many ways in the previous purports that fundamentally, a leader has to have so many qualities, and we all read that, we all understand that. But fundamentally, a leader should be grounded in spiritual principles, spirituality. Otherwise, he cannot lead properly. Because when you start leading, as Alankar Prabhu, you are leading so many initiatives now. We have our TC, talk to them privately, they will tell you what a challenge it can be. So, now we are building a new temple, several times bigger challenge. So, in order to move forward with these kind of initiatives, in this kind of endeavor, it requires clarity in thinking, because we can easily get lost with so many things. Pride is one of them, passion, everything comes together. So in the process, we can make decisions that could be undesirable. So grounding in spiritual principles is what Prabhupada talks about. And I've read an article from him in Back to Godhead, where he says modern leaders, what really modern leaders means, whether it's a political, whether it's a social initiative, doesn't matter what it is. Modern leader has to have proper consciousness. And we know what that consciousness means. He's referring to is Krishna consciousness. So that is the fundamental. And he says, if you read the article, it clearly says, besides everything else, yes, you need honesty. Yes, you need to be truthful. Yes, you need to be determined. Yes, you need to be decisive. Yes, you have to be compassionate. All this is needed. But he says, follow the four regulative principles first. know, let's start there. Clean slate, right? And that gives you, and I've heard lectures from His Grace Premasundar Prabhu, Naveen Krishna Prabhu. So that gives you, they have repeatedly said, that gives you the strength to follow the spiritual practice sincerely, because there will be a lot of temptations. You all know that, and the temptations can be overcome only by being following strict sadhana. So chanting those 16 rounds, following the regulative principles, so important. So that is what Prabhupada, that's where he starts. And then gradually he goes on to explain what the leader should do and shouldn't do. Okay. And Pariksit Maharaj is an idea. You don't have to sit and explain to Pariksit Maharaj, Prabhu, you have to follow, he is already, he's in the descendants of Pandavas. He has seen Lord Krishna face to face when he was in the embryo of his mother. And he has seen how the Lord protected him face to face. So he had perfect faith in the Lord. And that faith, actually, you can see when he was cursed by Shringi, the son of Shamika. And you all know that pastime. So what was his mood? For me, when I read how he reacted, and it was very comparable to how Lord Ramchandra reacted when Dasharath said, you have to go to the forest. What was Lord Ramchandra's mood when Dasharath said, here is a man who is going to be crowned as the king on that day? And Dasharath Maharaj, very, very sad, he's in his sulking chamber when Lord Ramchandra comes on the day of coronation. Father, why are you like this? Oh, I somehow gave this boon. And because of the boon, now you and Sita have to go to the forest. And Lord Ramchandra's reaction was, that's it? And I was putting myself in that situation. What is, I'm going to get all this power and influence and money and wealth, and you're asking me to wear a tree bark and go to the forest? How insulting that can be, right? But Lord Ramchandra didn't even flinch. He said, okay, Father, that's it. Don't worry, done. And he went, he changed his clothes, and he was on his way out. See, that we can talk about detachment, but when the situation comes, how we react is going to be that's going to be the time it's going to be tested all the time. So we all have a lot of tests. And I can safely say to you that I flunk a lot of tests on a day-to-day basis. So we can go into some details on that later. But the test is important. The Lord will always test. If you say you are surrendering to the Lord, He will give you the test. If you don't want to surrender, yes, you can be in your own way, but the final test you will fail. You know what that is. So it's better to fail now and be prepared later, as opposed to failing the final exam. So Pariksit Maharaj was such a king, where when he was cursed, he said, no problem. He had a beautiful wife, he had a beautiful family, he had a lot of wealth in the kingdom. He was the emperor of the universe, not just one country. And imagine what he did. He just gave up everything and he went to the forest. He went to the banks of, is it Kaveri? No, sorry, Yamuna or Ganges. Ganges, not Yamuna. And he surrendered himself to Sukhadev Goswami, and he for 7 days he didn't drink, he didn't eat, he didn't sleep, and he was listening to the Bhagavad Gita. So that is the sign of a great leader, detachment. And if you are detached, you can be selfless. So with that being said, from the any questions? Okay, should we jump into the text? Okay, so the first text, Sutta Uvacha, Evam dharme pravadati sa samradvijya satmaha samahitena manasa vikhade paryashtatam. Translation. Sutta Goswami said, O best among the Brahmanas, the Emperor Pariksit, thus hearing the personality of religion speak, was fully satisfied, and without mistake or regret, he gave his reply. Purport. The statement of the bull, the personality of religion, was full of philosophy and knowledge, and the king was satisfied since he could understand the suffering the bull was not the ordinary one. Unless one is perfectly conversant with the law of Supreme Lord, one cannot speak such things touching philosophical truths. The emperor, being also on an equal level of sagacity, replied to the point without doubts or mistakes. So, in this verse, um, Sukadeva Goswami is narrating how Pariksit Maharaj makes decisions as a leader. So he knows Kali Purusha has inflicted pain on the bull and the cow, something that is unheard of those days, and he's already disturbed. So he, in his mind, he kind of knows what happened. But a great leader does not just jump to judgment. He always steps back and he evaluates by facts. So he is collecting facts from the bull and he is asking the bull as a matter of inquiry. Now, the word sagacity in the verse is mentioned even in the previous verse, sagacious mind. So, what is sagacity? If at all anybody knows, want to take a crack at it? If not, for want of time, I know we don't want to dwell on it too much. Sagacity means, amongst many things, astute. A leader who's astute. Okay? Discernment, astute. And he's also broad-minded. See, when you're making decisions, you're not making decisions for the short term. You're looking at the big picture. Okay, what all can it impact? Okay, this is what the great executives of companies who are successful leaders, you see, that's how they make decisions. So that's what sagacity means. Sagacious. So he's sagacious in terms of discerning information, making sure the information he hears is valid, and then he studies the impact over a period of time, and then he makes decisions. That's who Pariksit Maharaj is. So here he is interviewing the bull. Hey, bull, please tell me what happened. Dharma, personality of dharma. What happened? And the bull is saying, this is what happened.
Very interesting fact. And I can open that, and the ego of this word has climbed all the time that shows that how we are approaching deeper and deeper about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just took a big chart of this term.
Okay.
How this term has been. So it was so high, people.
They dumbed it down.
Yeah, even more suggestive.
Okay. Completely. And you can see it every day. Living examples in front of you. Okay. So anyway, so here Pariksit Maharaj is curiously, he's inquiring from the bull, what dharma, personality of bull, please tell me what happened. Why are you in this state? And that's what this verse is highlighting. And it also, again, exemplifies the qualities of a leader, which we discussed earlier. We'll move on to the next verse. 117:22. Raja Uvacha Dharmani Bravishi Dharmanyana Dharmoshi Vrisharupadrik Yad Adharma Krita Stanam Sucha Kashyapi Tad Bhavat. Translation. The king said, O you who are in the form of a bull, you know the truth of religion, and you are speaking according to the principle that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. You are no other than the personality of religion. Okay. Purport. A devotee's conclusion is that no one is directly responsible for being a benefactor or a mischief monger without the sanction of the Lord. Therefore, he does not consider anyone to be directly responsible for such action. But in both the cases, he takes it for granted that either benefit or loss is God sent, and thus it is his grace. In case of benefit, no one will deny that it is God sent, but in the case of loss or reverses, one becomes doubtful about how the Lord could be so unkind to his devotee as to put him in great difficulty. Jesus Christ was seemingly put into such great difficulty, being crucified by the ignorant, but he was never angry at the mischief mongers. This is the way of accepting a thing either favorable or unfavorable. Thus, for a devotee, the identifier is equally a sinner, like the mischief monger. By God's grace, the devotee tolerates all reverses. Maharaj Pariksit observed this, and therefore he could understand that the bull was no other than the personality of religion himself. In other words, a devotee has no suffering at all because so called suffering is also God's grace for a devotee who sees God in everything. The cow and bull never placed any complaint before the king for being tortured by the personality of Kali, although everyone lodges such complaints before the state authorities. The extraordinary behavior of the bull made the king conclude that the bull was certainly the personality of religion, for no one else could understand the finer intricacies of the codes of religion. Very deep, meaningful purport. I'm sure questions will come here in terms of application. But what did we observe in this verse and the purport that Srila Prabhupada gave? It is first and foremost how a devotee reacts to adversity in life. And he quotes the life of Jesus Christ. And we all know what happened when he was crucified. And crucifixion is not easy at all. You know, it's like a million times more than just being insulted. You are insulted, you're humiliated, but you're also put on the cross and you're incurring pain. They're hitting nails on your hand. Never easy. In that mood, you may cry out normally and you may be angry. Those are the two reactions that will come. You know, you're angry at the people who are doing this because you don't deserve to be treated like that, no matter what the perception is. And the second thing is you are in pain. In that mood, if one has to say, "Oh, my Father, please forgive them," it is uh, the height of tolerance, height of compassion, right? And here he talks about Jesus Christ as an example. And in our Vaishnava Sampradaya, we have a lot of examples. What does it come to your mind? Yeah, a similar situation. Who endured a similar situation? Chota Haridas. But is it Chota Haridas or Haridas Thakur? Are you talking about Haridas Thakur? Was beaten on the 22 markets? Oh, okay. Chota Haridas. Okay. Okay, sorry. I was thinking about Krishna Das when you mentioned it. Sorry. Take it. Servant of Chaitanya. Chota Haridas, Haridas Thakur, and Prahlad Maharaj, right? So we have so many Vasudeva Datta, right? So we have several examples in Vaishnava following who has displayed a very similar mood, and including Srila Prabhupada when he came to the Western world. So we can follow in their footsteps. Now, can we imitate them? We all know we cannot imitate them, but we should follow in the footsteps. That's what it's always recommended, which means what we have to imbibe that mood. So when adversity impacts you, how you behave defines who you are as a devotee. Right? It is hard. You may even not, you may act in a way that's contradictory to what is stated here. But what is needed in order to imbibe that mood is humility. But practically speaking, humility, yes, I want to become humble. Practically speaking, from what I've heard from other senior devotees, is practice. You have to practice how you can demonstrate this behavior. Okay, which means you have to be prepared. When this happens, I'm going to react like this. Initially, it may sound very scripted, but as you practice more and more that kind of a mood, I was told that you can at least start in that path, not fully accomplish that. So that's what we see here. Now, how did Pariksit Maharaj understand that the bull is much more mature and elevated from a spiritual standpoint based on the response? The bull and the cow could have simply blamed Kali Purusha Kali Purusha could have been destroyed because King Pariksit is so powerful. In one, he could have just killed Kali Purusha. But it is the mood of the bull and the cow in such a way they didn't want to blame the Kali Purusha. Rather, and in the previous verses we saw, there are different Vedic injunctions as to how one can attribute the reason for this. There are 6 tattvas, right? I think you all read that in the previous, like you have the Gautama philosophy, um, and then you have the, I'm forgetting the names now, but we can go back if you want. If you have time, we'll go back to that purport, like 3 purports back. There are 6 principles that different philosophies that are defined as to how one can conclude the reasons for suffering. I think you might remember that, right? Including it ends with Vedavyas, right? So what did we understand through the logic? That the bull deliberately presents those logic. The bull knows what is the right thing to do, but it deliberately presents the personality of dharma. He presents the 6 different ways of understanding how one can determine what is the reason why we are suffering. Okay, one says it is because of your karmic activities.
Philosophy, sir, right? Philosophy, Gautama, doctor of Patanjali, doctor of Kapila, doctor of concept of Dharma, yeah, all the thoughts of
Right. Right. So those are the 6 ways, right? And each has different interpretation of what the suffering is all about. One attributes to your action or karma, and then one attributes to the Sankhya philosophy is all about understanding nature, that is propagated by Lord Kapila Dev, and then Vedavyas finally, which talks about the bhakti principles. So after understanding all of that, what is the conclusion? The suffering is because of, it is the will of the Lord, because you are a surrendered devotee, right? If you say you are surrendered, then you are subjecting yourself to the will of the Lord. So it is happening by His will that you are encountering the suffering. And the Kali Purusha happens to be an instrument of delivering that suffering to you. For what? For your own purification and strengthening your faith in Lord. So that's how we have to. So this is happening to me, and I know I'm saying this not fully realized on this, but I can tell you safely, it gives you peace of mind when you take that approach. That when something bad happens, that you think that you don't deserve, and it happens anyway, then you just sort of. I think the first reaction, maybe in the initial stages when you are as a devotee, you ask Lord, why me? I'm doing all this service and all that. Why is this happening to me? That's complaining kind of mood. But instead, the mood should be like this. Okay, it is happening because of the sanction of the Lord, and this is happening for my good. So that's how we take it. That's how we don't show anger at the instrument who's delivering that to you. That's how you prevent conflict. One way. Okay, there are other ways to do it. So that's what we observe. And seeing that mood, seeing that the highest religious codes is being embraced by the Guru. Pariksit Maharaj says, okay, now I understand why you are saying what you are saying. Okay. Now, does it mean he has forgiven the Kali Purusha? We will see that in the future verses. He takes action though. As a king, you are also expected, as a leader, you also have to be very decisive in taking the right action so that this incident does not happen in the future for the protection of the devotees. So a king and the Lord, a king is the representative of the Lord. How so? One may ask. The Lord does 3 things. He says that in that verse. Paritrana. What are the 3 things he does? Protects the devotees or the innocent, destroys the miscreants, punishes them, establishes dharma, religious principles. King also does the same thing, or supposed to do the same thing, right? Modern day kings, we don't see that, but Pariksit Maharaj was that. So he acts in that mood. So he was able to, so everything came together in this verse. How he makes decision, qualities of the king, qualities of a devotee, everything you see here in this verse. 117.23 Atvadeva Mayaya Nunam Gatir Agochara Setasho Vachasas Chapi Bhutanam Iti Nishaya. Translation. Thus, it is concluded that the Lord's energies are inconceivable. No one can estimate them by mental speculation or by word jugglery. Purport. A question may be raised as to why a devotee should refrain from identifying an actor, although he knows definitely that the Lord is the ultimate doer of everything. Knowing the ultimate doer, one should not pose himself as an ignorant of the actual performer. To answer this doubt, the reply is that the Lord is also not directly responsible for everything, is done by its deputed Maya Shakti or material energy. The material energy is always provoking doubts about the supreme authority of the Lord. The personality of religion knew perfectly well that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme Lord. And still, he was put into doubts by deluding energy, and thus he refrained from mentioning the Supreme Cause. This doubtfulness was due to the contamination of both Kali and material energy. The whole atmosphere of this age of Kali is magnified by the deluding energy, and the proportion of measurement is inexplicable. So let's start there. What is the meaning of inexplicable? Cannot be quantified. So look at the last sentence. The proportion of measurement, the damage done by this Kali Yuga, it cannot even be quantified. Inexplicable. The deluding energy of Maya, right? So, what do we learn in this purport? First of all, I missed one point in the previous one. A person who identifies, according to the religious code, a person who identifies the sinner or, hey, this finger pointing, he is the reason why this is happening, deserves the same destination that the sinner has. That's what the previous verse said. That's why finger pointing is so bad. And Jainidai Prabhu said in his class, if you point one finger at somebody, what happens? Three are pointing at you. And then what happens? Conflict. And then what happens in the conflict? The main reason why what is the issue is lost. It is now becoming personal between you and him. That's why it's so dangerous to point fingers. So with that being said, that's another reason why the bull was very careful in not blaming anybody for the cause. And then the other point you see here is how the Maya Shakti, the second point he makes, a beautiful point Prabhupada makes, is Krishna doesn't have anything to do with all this. He's not, okay, he has orchestrated this world through Lord Brahma, but he is not actually interfering with your free will and what you do with your life. He gives you the principle. Even he tells Arjuna in the last verse of Bhagavad Gita, how did he end? I've told you what I have to tell you. Now it's your will, whatever you wish, however you want to follow. So that's how the Lord is. He doesn't have any action in any of this. His energies are performing it. Now, what the Mayavadi philosophy says, the Lord transforms into this energy. That's where the big disconnect is. The Lord his identity is never lost. His potency is never lost. His 64 qualities are still there, but his energies are doing the work. Whereas the Mayavadi philosophy, the distinction is the Lord transforms into that energy, and his identity is lost. That's why it says Shunyavadi, right? So the impersonalism, Brahman. So that's the point here. The Lord is never lost. His identity is there. Prabhupada, I think a good 30 to 40% of his purport, Prabhupada pays a lot of focus to this impersonalism because of the dangers involved. So anyway, that's the second point he makes. The third point he makes is the power of Maya. Maya is so powerful, no matter how strong you are. You're seeing this time and again in current day examples, how a great man is diminished in no time because he gets deluded. He's illusioned. So in the illusion state, he cannot act, right? So in Nectar of Instruction, there is a verse that explains what happens because of illusion. Why? What are the four imperfections? Something like that. You remember? You are always making mistakes. Remember? Cheating propensity,
and, uh,
imperfect, and you are deluded. So that's what is happening. And so powerful leaders, that's why they have to be grounded in, back to what we discussed earlier, spiritual principles. So that gives them the clarity and the will to stay clear and make good judgments and good decisions. So with this, I will stop here, Prabhu. Now, do I have some more time? I want to speak briefly about Ramanujacharya. Or no, I'm following your template, whatever you want me to do. So I wanted to say something about this great personality. I don't know if this opportunity never comes where it's all coming together like today. So Ramanujacharya, today is his appearance day. He is the Acharya for Sri Sampradaya. We all know that. So I want to just highlight a couple of things that I always get like enamored when I hear about Ramanujacharya. You know, everybody has their pet stories about Ramanujacharya. For me, it is a few examples. So the first one reinforces, it gives us hope. What is that? Ramanujacharya, he approaches a saint. What's his name? There is Goshti Purana and there is another Kanchi Purana. Do you know Kanchi Purana? He is a great scholar in those days in the southern part of India when this pastimes took place. First of all, Ramanujam. What does that mean? Younger brother of Lord Ram. Who is younger brother of Lord Ram? Lakshman. So he is incarnation of Lakshman. Yes. Okay. Rama Anujam. Right. So he is Lakshman in the human form. Now, second thing. So he approaches this Kanchi Purana as one great quality or characteristic. He personally talks to Lord Varadaraj. Lord Varadaraj is the presiding deity in Kanchipuram. He is none other than Vishnu, right? And what does Kanchipurana do, his service? It's very hot in summer in South India, needless to say, if you've ever been there. So he will fan the Lord. That's his service. While fanning, he will talk. And the Lord reciprocates. Ramanujacharya understood this. And he, being a very keen devotee of the Lord, approaches Kanchipurana and he said, I have 6 questions. Can you please ask Lord Varadaraj to reply to these 6 questions? He said, okay, what is this? So he gives it to him. And Kanchipurana asks him. Now, what is important is that one question of the 6. What the question was from Ramanujacharya, I may be a surrendered devotee of the Lord, but because I'm imperfect, he's asking on behalf of us, by the way. Ramanujacharya is an elevated devotee. I could easily forget Lord when I'm dying. So what happens to me? The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, at the time of death, I think in the 10th chapter, this verse comes where he says, if you remember me at the time of death, you're sure to attain my destination. But what if I don't? Because of so many other things that happens. 8th chapter? Okay. So, I thought there was one in the 10th too, but I could be wrong. It's okay. So, when he asked this question to Varadaraj Perumal or Lord Varadaraj responds saying, if you are a surrendered devotee in your mind, despite all the imperfections that happens, you will surely come to me. Please tell him. So that answer to Ramanujacharya is also very reflective for us because we have some hope, in case we are not able to remember the Lord. But if you had led a good life, surrendered to Lord, that's very important. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains what surrender means. We will not go into that. So if you are able to follow all that, and you led a life like that, and at the end you still cannot remember the Lord says, no worries. So I thought I will mention that. There is some hope. The second thing is Kanchi Purana, another great scholar who lived in the times of Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya wanted to understand a more in-depth knowledge of certain mantras, and he had some questions. So he approaches Kanchipurna. He approaches him 17 times. First time when he knocks on the door, and Kanchipurna is living far away from Ramanujacharya. Those days we don't have cars and all that. He had to walk all that distance. And he goes, knocks on the door. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Who's this? It is I, Ramanujan. He says like that. It is I, Ramanujan. And Kanchipurna says, you can come after I die. That's the first response he gets. Can you imagine? You come after my death. So what will I talk to you? So Ramanujacharya is very humble. He didn't argue with him. He didn't ask him why are you saying like. He just goes all the way back to Trichy, Srirangam. Like this, he attempted 17 times. And in between, in one of the replies, Kanchipurna says, when you stop saying I, the Ramanujam, I means I. I cannot answer. Become more humble, then we will talk. That was one of the replies he gets in this. But Ramanujacharya never debated with him. He said, okay. He comes back. So after 17 times, he meets Kanchipurna. He didn't give up. I don't know how long it took that 17 times, right? And then he asks this question. After many questions, this is the famous incident. Everybody knows. He asks Kanchipurna, tell me that one mantra which can liberate all the human beings from suffering and they can attain the abode of Lord instantly, salvation. He says, I will whisper in your ears. This can be only given to qualified pure brahmanas. Don't ever give it to anybody. And he whispers in his ears. I think that mantra is Om Namo Narayana. And he says, okay. He steps out of Kanchipurna. He walks straight to Srirangam. He climbs the topmost part of the temple and he shouts. And Ramanujacharya, everybody knows his prowess. So he's standing there. And so the entire town assembles in that. What is Ramanujacharya doing on top of the temple, Vigraha? And he says, if you want to be liberated, you should chant this mantra, Om Namo. It's a broadcast. Everybody's chanting blissfully. And some of them are even feeling the love of God because they're chanting in that mood. Kanchipurna came to know about this. He was furious. You can imagine. And he says, Ramanujacharya, what happened? I told you not to tell anybody. You go and broadcast it. You will go to hell. The reactions are going to be very bad for you. Ramanujacharya, first thing he does is prostrated obeisances. He didn't talk to him anything. And then he gets up and then he says, please forgive me. And he said, if I have to go to hell because I gave this mantra to all of them and made their lives perfect, I'm willing to go to hell. No problem. Kanchipurna seemed, and Ramanujacharya was very young at that time. He was not like some old, aged scholar or something. Seeing this mood, Kanchipurna melted. Such a scholar, he melted. And he said, from today, in Tamil, he said, Mannan, you are my king. You are my master. And he embraced him. So that was number 2. So Ramanujacharya was so compassionate, you can imagine. That's why Prabhupada in Gaudiya, in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, they like Ramanuja because the teachings are parallel to Lord Chaitanya in many ways. And then the third incident is, I'm connecting back to Kanchipurna. Ramanujacharya becomes now very famous, popular. Now he's been made the Acharya of Sri Sampradaya and his base is Srirangam. And one day when he and his disciples are walking on the banks of Kaveri River, hot summer, you can imagine. Kanchipurna comes in the opposite direction. The norm is you immediately offer obeisances if you see a senior devotee. Ramanujacharya does. But the norm is also those days, until he says gets up, you cannot get up. You have to lie there like that. That was the standard day. Nowadays we just get up and then we do it, right? But those days you have to be there until that person lifts you up. On that occasion, it is on the banks of Kaveri, hot summer afternoon. Ramanujacharya falls down. Kanchipurna never says a word. He waits. He waits. Goes on. Ramanujacharya is like this, on the hot sand, burning. His body is burning. One of his disciples, I forget his name, couldn't bear it. Ramanujacharya. And he said, what is this? I'm doing like this to my guru. This is bad. And he said, thank you. And then not only he did that, he goes underneath Ramanujacharya somehow and puts his body on his top and he's lying on the sand, this disciple. So seeing this, Kanchipurana picks both of them up and he said, I was waiting amongst all the devotees who's going to come and help Ramanujacharya. And now you did that. I'm entrusting you to be his cook. Carefully screen every meal because those days, poison, there's a rumor of poisoning. Ramanujacharya was in the danger of getting poisoned, food poison, because people didn't like him. So he said, you are the person who's going to guard him against these kind of incidents. Scrutinize every single prasadam that he's taking. Make sure it is not only in good quality, but there is no other untoward incidents that happens. And last thing, he socialized alvars, songs of alvars. And those days, in any temple, any song that is devotional to the Lord has to be sung in Sanskrit. Ramanujacharya was the first one who socialized those songs in Tamil. And then now you go to South India, a lot of prayers are offered in Tamil. And Ramanujacharya is, of course, he deity worship, so many things I can talk about. But I'll stop here, Prabhus. Thank you very much for allowing me to go past by 10 minutes of your time. Any discussion?
Oh, so thank you for clarifying. I heard about but I had some impression in my mind, which is from Madhvacharya, where he tells about the mantra. Because of that you link that it is very similar to the teachings of Prabhupada. That's why the connection. So I have this question: is there any way to explain, because when you say Ramanujacharya is a Lakshman himself, so that means he is a Balram as well. Is it?
Rama Anuja.
Yeah.
Didn't say Krishna.
But Krishna is Lord Ram.
Yeah. No, to be more specific in terms of pastimes, he is in the mood of Lakshman is what I heard. Because he is brother of Ram according to the name. Now you can also interpret it, okay, Ram is non-different than Krishna, Lakshman is non-different than Balaram, maybe you can extrapolate like that. But what is written there is what I'm saying.
So it's not mentioned as such that he is Balram.
No, it's very specific, Lakshman. Anything else?
Thank you, Prabhu. I was actually, let's go back to the verses. I was just thinking of one thing. When all the whole conversation took place between Dharma and Pariksit Maharaj is listening and is trying to get all the evidences and then not rushing into the conclusion, right? But when he actually saw, so before that Padmaka Prabhu was giving 2 weeks ago his Sravanam Saturday class, and he mentioned this, that Pariksit Maharaj was not sure if this is some demigod who has come to test, but later he was convinced that no, this is bull, this is dharma. I'm just thinking, as the ideal king, as the ideal protector, is one's duty to delay, and I found this as like word jugglery kind of, that who knows who is the culprit, I don't know who did it, and then king is saying, no, please tell me, explain me, now. It feels like that you go to the court, and the court, it's evident that who is the criminal. But then you say, no, but let's hear both the sides, no. But I saw this king is cutting your legs off. I saw from my eyes, because that's how Pariksit Maharaj entered the scene. In the first few verses, he saw that this king is torturing this bull, and so he knows he is the culprit. So now, why he is not taking the action right away instead of delaying, and then okay, because sometimes we don't like it, right? We go to the court, and the court says, no, next date. Now we are gonna listen to this one. Now we are gonna listen to this party. It's very evident. Why you want to waste time?
Wonderful question. Again, this is, I'm answering the way I think is the right response. We can also talk to other senior devotees and see what they have to say. But what I understand from this is, again, going back to the qualities of a leader. Sometimes it's very evident, but you also want to give an opportunity to the person who is victimized to say their side of the story first, right? Even today it happens, right? If you let's say I file a case against somebody, I'm being harassed or whatever. Okay, there might be some evidence that are very obvious. Okay, there are traces of evidence that is left behind where I know that this person has definitely was on the scene and he said this and this because I have a witness. But still, in the court of law, now you are the defendant because now I'm charging against you, right? You are given a voice to explain what your position is. And the victim is also given an opportunity to explain what that position, what happened. Because the prosecutor asked this question. On that day, you said this happened. Can you give me all the details? You go to the witness stand and you touch the Bible and then you start speaking. So they collect data first so that everybody in front of the judge, all the data is assembled together and the story is pieced together. So here Pariksit Maharaj is giving an opportunity to the bull to explain what happened from bull's point of view. Although he saw on the spot what all happened, right? So that is the nature of a leader who's not totally judgmental and who that sagacious mind comes back to that definition. He gathers information, he is astute, he studies the long-term impact before he takes the action. Okay, so that he doesn't want to have any repercussions later saying, Prabhuji, why did you do this? This piece of data did not align with your decision. Maybe you missed this. He doesn't want to be in that situation, because he has to do justice to his citizens. So that is my understanding. He is not being judgmental. He's keeps an open mind. He gets information from all parties and studies the impact and finally makes the decision. That's what I think. And also it gives here, there is an opportunity more that is on the practical side of things. But here, if he doesn't ask the bull that question, the bull's mood will never be revealed. The bull has no way of telling you and me what is the mood of a devotee. There is an aspect of pastime here, right? If he didn't even ask the bull that question, and he just went about punishing Kali. First of all, in the design of the Supreme Lord, punishing Kali and taking out Pali is not supposed to be part of that script. Because otherwise, how will you see the impacts of Kali? Otherwise, how will you know how a leader responds to that situation objectively, right? I mean, we all know what happened later on. I'm not, stealing the thunder from the future speaker, whoever is going to speak about it. But we know what he did with Khalid somewhat, right? He says, okay, I'll give you a place. So he's trying to, even there, if you see, he's trying to be compassionate to the person who committed the crime. And he says, okay, instead of just taking you out, I'm going to give you certain places where you can go and sit, right? So how will you understand that whole mindset if this dialogue doesn't happen? So you're cutting away the opportunity for a dialogue, right? That's how I saw it, Prabhu.
I mean, he is a leader. He will not take a impulsive action, right? Because might see something that's not always might be reaction to something that what he saw that attack. He did something. So at this time, Srila Prabhupada also explained that why we are the critical for sure because those days nobody would harm that cow. As soon as one harms the cow, Pariksit himself says, no matter who he is, even he might be a demigod, I will kill them. So it's natural like whoever is what is the position. If somebody is cutting the cow, that's it.
I understand what you're saying. So this is such an abominable act. What you're saying is there is no need for scrutiny and judgment. It's time to take the action immediately. So it is so black and white is what you're saying. I understand. But yet, this is my understanding, how a king perceives, okay, that is there. That is this, but eventually he also takes action on Kali. It's not like he lets Kali alone.
With this time, there is too worried that let's say that if you put this as the most ideal way, and you say, okay, I know, I have seen two people not competing, and I know that some people think it's the right thing to do wrong. But now I'm giving an opportunity for this person to succeed. Let's say that other person is very good at tennis, or like can do very good work. Now you're like, oh, you know what? Oh,
No, but then you're a weak leader
uh,
because you have to. There are multiple things here. It's more complex than what you and I can talk right now. But a leader is decisive, but he also gathers facts. Okay, and he's also able to discern what is fiction versus what is real, right? So if you make up and if you act and if you um, try to convince him by tears or whatever, I mean, the dramatical thing, ultimately you still have to see what is right, what is wrong here, and take the decisive action, right? That's why it's so hard to be in management because you get blamed anyway. So go ahead.
like you were saying that somebody might be pretend because it could be like a demon pretend as a cow, and so that's why he will not take in such act. I think that's why the illusion takes over.
And somewhere also, although I haven't analyzed that very closely, I want to do it some other time for my own understanding, where it says the bull also was a little bit an illusion. That's why he didn't come out and speak the way it spoke later. Remember the previous verse towards the end of the purport?
Not the illusion, but this is the right because that is the wisdom.
No, but it also says why he delayed speaking initially. If you go back to the previous verse, right? Bull did not come out and say immediately what happened to Pariksit Maharaj because he was also under the spell of Maya or something, if I understood it correctly. But we can go back and read that later. Okay. But great question, Alankar Prabhu. There is no one right or wrong answer here. But in this case, the pastime is also intermingled with this situation, right? So to some extent, it has to flow that way. But yeah, I mean, there are so many case studies right from Prabhupada days until now, how certain situations have been dealt with. Some of it we have data, some of it we don't have. We have to go by what we hear. So, but Prabhupada is perfect in any case. So if you see his way of dealing with things, it's not one size fit all. It has always been case by case, according to situation, right? Similarly, his answers also varied according to the situation. So that tells you, he's open-minded. He deals it on the merit of that situation. So that's what the leader has to do.
But yeah, one more thing that mentioned that when he wanted to kill Sally, but then he realized, okay, but this is the plan of God.
Exactly.
So that is Krishna's energy. You cannot defeat.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why Bhagavatam is there.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada,
Jai. Haribol. All glories to the assembled devotees. Alankar Prabhu ki jai, Anant Sesha Prabhu ki jai.